We pulled some panels under here in order to access the comfort control module. There it is right there. With it, we unplugged it, and these covers have to come off in order to see wire locations and back probe. So that was easy to get off. I'm not going to show that on video. But this was the easiest computer to get to. The other modules on this network, we'd have to pull a steering column apart, or worse, pull the door panel off or something along those lines. So simply pulling that cover and pulling these connectors apart was pretty easy. So we'll get the scope on it, see if we have communication on those wires. Okay, I got Cortland doing the standing on your head work, the upside down under dash work, because he's young and I'm old. God, I just admitted on camera I'm old. So he's back probing the orange and green and orange and brown wires for our communication network, and we have the scope hooked up here and going to scope that signal. So here's our signal on the orange and green and orange and brown wire. Pause this and zoom in here. So not much of a square wave going on here in the blue. It is spiky, but no, just the bare semblance of square wave down there. I would just say this thing is noisy, or it does seem to be in packets, like neat, orderly packets, but not so much a square wave. And on the red one, there is more of a square wave there, but it's still spiky, lots of noise on it. Let's use our cursors and measure here. I'm going to draw a cursor down here, and there on the bottom. So the square wave portion of it is just 2 volts, meaning the first cursor is at 2.4, top cursor is at 4.9, so our square wave is 2.5 volts. And I don't know how I would do that on the bottom, since it's not a very clear-cut waveform. But at this point, that's definitely our problem, causing our no communication. Very poor waveform on the communication wires. But why is the question. I think we could measure our terminating resistors, but I'm not sure that's going to be a problem, because it seems to be on both. Maybe it could be the terminator resistors, but we'll probably have to start unplugging modules one at a time and seeing which one affects it. I don't think it's a short to ground, because obviously the waveform is going up and down. I don't think it's short to power, because it's, like I said, it's going up and down. Let's go ahead and unplug this module and see what the waveform looks like. As Cortland unplugged it, the dash made noise and the lights flickered. I think, yeah, all the lights went out on the dash, because we do have the key on right now. So here's our pattern with it unplugged. Now, I do have the scope set on auto settings, so the waveform size did change based on that, but I'll pause it here and I'll zoom in here, and I'm going to use the cursors on the blue one. Obviously we have a much better square wave here, and the blue one is going from 30 millivolts, so basically 0, to 3.9 volts, so it's got a 4 volt square waveform, and that is a good waveform. I think we've got lucky, in our central electric modules probably causing the problem. And the red one, it is at, let me change the cursors here. The red one is at a 1 volt, and goes all the way up to 5 volts, so there's a 4 volt fluctuation there. The blue one is at 0 volts and going up. The red one is at 4 volts and coming down. So I think based on these waveforms we should be able to communicate with some modules now. We'll switch over to VAGCOM and see if we can communicate with the air conditioning unit and the steering wheel control module, our door modules. I'll save this waveform and then we'll do some scans with VAGCOM. Okay, we're using the same computer. We just switched over to VAGCOM and plugged in the VAGCOM cable, and we're worried about the steering wheel control module. We still have the key on, and we are communicating with the steering wheel control module now. And I'll check fault codes just to show that we are actually communicating. And we definitely have some fault codes in there. Couldn't communicate with it before, so I think those codes are not concerning to me. And we couldn't communicate with the auto HVAC before. And we are communicating with it, no codes in there. So unplugging the central electric module did seem to renew our communication. I guess the question is it the module itself, or is there something with the wiring causing it to not communicate? We'll check our terminating resistors real quick and then go from there. Trying to gain some confidence in replacing this central electric module in this car. So I've decided to open it up, see if I can see anything visually wrong with it. I've seen them before where you could actually smell them, and you could smell burnt parts, and then you open them up. Sometimes you find something burnt up, sometimes you don't. But I'm going to open this up, see if I can see anything to give me any confidence that it's going to fix it. It just has these release tabs. I've released several of them so far. And I'll take a good look at this circuit board and see if I can find anything wrong with it. If I do, I'll show you. Well, I've looked this thing over real good with a magnifying glass, and I can't see anything wrong with it. In other words, taking this apart didn't give me any confidence that replacing it will fix it. On our 2011 Volkswagen Jetta with a communication problem, multiple modules are down, not communicating. Unplugging the central electric module seems to regain communication. I've revisited it, went through the whole diagnostic process a second time, and the only conclusion I can come up with is it needs that module. Getting a used module like that is very difficult to get the right one, and there are some available on the internet, but the customer has a time frame issue, and they're more than willing to pay for one that we can get here quickly. The dealership actually has one at their warehouse, so we can get it here quickly. So it ends up being a $500 decision. The computer's $500 from Volkswagen. So I really wanted to make sure my diagnosis was correct. Anytime you put an expensive computer on like that, or any expensive part for that matter, your diagnosis better be right. Here at this shop, if I make the diagnosis and charge a diagnosis fee, I guarantee that it's right, or else I don't charge them a dime. And so I revisited the diagnosis, went through the whole process again, came up with the exact same readings, exact same conclusions. The only doubt in my mind is on some computers, if the 5-volt reference, let's say for instance for the TPS or other sensors, was shorted to ground or shorted to positive, it can affect communication. And that's because the internal circuits of the computer have regulators in them, and those regulators work to make that 5-volt reference and to make other functions inside the computer happen, for instance communication. So you can't count on a computer working that has that 5-volt reference shorted to ground or shorted to power. So the problem with it is I can't just easily check that 5-volt reference. I'm not even sure this computer has that, by the way. You know, that would be an engine computer that I'm referencing with a 5-volt reference, and this is a central electric module. and this thing has about 120 wires running to it. So and the way that Mitchell on Demand shows the schematic, it does not show the what it is. So I would have to trace down each wire, and each of those wires most of the time on the schematic just shows that it goes to some system. So I would have to trace down each wire with a wiring schematic onto a different wiring schematic, onto a different wiring schematic, probably onto a different page, and then figure out, reverse engineer what each of those things does. And I would have to do that 150 times. And so at this point, I'm kind of at a loss on what to do. You know, I need to make a decision and either recommend a computer or kick the car to the curb. And with it being a $500 decision, I'm very tempted to kick the car to the curb. Now I want to help people, and I want to help this customer, but I also need to make a realistic decision based on liability for me. So if I'm wrong, that's $500 out of my pocket, because the computer's not returnable. If I order that computer from Volkswagen, it's not returnable. So a used computer would be a great option in this circumstance, just to lower my cost and lower my liability, lower the customer's cost also. But the time factor is just not possible in this case. What I'm getting at is I think I'm going to make the decision to go ahead and order the Volkswagen computer and chalk it up as a learning experience if I'm wrong. And so at this point, I'm going to call the customer, tell them I made a decision, and we're going to order a computer. Really hope I'm right on this one. I don't have to post this video if I don't want to post a video admitting a mistake like this, but I might post it anyway, just to be a learning experience. Yeah, I guess I'll order a computer and we'll go from there. Well, here it is. We've received the new computer for our 2011 Jetta with communication problem. I can't do this one-handed. I'll cut it open and we'll go from there. We'll probably just plug it in real quick and see if it communicates, and we'll breathe a heavy sigh of relief if it does, and we'll have a heavy sigh of despair if we don't.